decrease the value of homes around them. I do not disagree with these statements. I agree with those statements. But I think that underlying those statements is the assumption that rental property is the poorly maintained homes and that landlords lack the desire, the capacity to maintain this property, when in fact your statistics show that 60% of the owner-occupied homes in town and 40% are rental properties, and that 65% of the code complaints come from owner-occupied properties and only 35% from rental properties. We try to do a very good job to upkeep our properties. I spend tens of thousands of dollars every year in maintaining my properties. I hire more than 20 individuals and companies every year to maintain my properties. In the past years, I've hired painting contractors, electricians, HVAC contractors, carpenters, plumbers. I've replaced driveways to the tune of $10,000 a pop. We spend a lot of money to maintain our rental homes. And that's exactly what they are. They're homes. They're homes where people live. They raise their children. They try to teach their children the right and the wrong things to do. They entertain their friends. They ask their families to come over for a barbecue. They want their homes to be nice. And we work at doing that. When they come home from the hospital having had chemotherapy, they don't need an air conditioner that's not working. And if it's not, they expect a landlord to get right on it and have it fixed. 20 people, 20 businesses I work with every year. And when I call those people, they get right on it to get those things repaired. When I first heard that Mayor Bowman was asking to create this rent-ready program, my first question is, what prompted this? Why is it that we need this kind of interference in the government into private business? And I was told, well, it was because the police need to come and look at property to make sure that the bushes aren't overgrown and somebody isn't in there that's going to jump out and mug you. And I'm saying, I'm not worried about that. That's a homeless. So let me back up. So what I said, I'm not worried about that. I've never heard of that happening in Harrisonville. And they said, well, no, they're worried about homeless people sleeping behind the bushes.
Mr. Smith, I'm sorry, your 3 minutes are up. Now, under our rules, you can ask for more time, but it will have to be granted by the entire board unless you're done.
Okay, I'd like to have 2 more minutes.
If you're okay with that, please raise your hand, board.
Okay.
All right, you have 2 minutes, Mr. Smith.
Okay. So I asked him, I said, well, that's homeless people hiding behind bushes is not a rent-ready problem. That's not a rent home problem. That's a vagrancy problem. My office was broken into in February of this year. When I called Homeland Security, KC, to come down and set up the security system, they said, look, what the problem you're dealing with is the fact that truckers are bringing homeless people in on a daily basis into Harrisonville because they don't have a vagrancy law, or they're not enforcing a vagrancy law, one or the other thing. Again, this is not a rent-ready problem. It's a problem that is with the enforcement of the vagrancy law. I feel like what you're doing now, that you, the government, are creating a new law that targets landlords, raising our cost of doing business, and unfairly targeting us as landlords for poorly maintained property, when in fact most of the unmaintained property and poorly maintained property is by owner-occupied residents. I think you have a codes enforcement office that does a great job, and they've already got the right to enforce the codes and get those things cleaned up. Thank you for your time. Thanks for the extra 2 minutes, too.
Thank you, sir. The next individual on the agenda is Paula Wooten. If you would step to the podium, please. And Mrs. Wooten, I would advise you of the same thing, the requirement to speak with respect to the board. We want to maintain decorum in council chambers. And so if you please state your name and your address for the record. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Paula Wooten. My address is 504 West Washington here in Harrisonville. This Rental Ready program is a small example of a larger problem in this country. It has become apparent that there is an overwhelming urge to censor and regulate every part of our lives. This is usually presented in the name of protection or safety, as this Rental Ready was presented at the town hall meeting. This is always at a cost in time, energy, resources, and finances on the part of the citizen or small business owner. In the end, the government gets bigger, and revenue raised by new ordinances and taxes is used to pay new employees to enforce the new regulations. My first red flag was we were told Rental Ready was initially introduced in Europe as part of a global initiative to make rental properties safer. As we are all aware, there's a global push in many things that are socialist and communist in nature. The founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, Klaus Schwab, has stated, by the year 2030, you will own nothing, and you will be happy about it. Is Rental Ready a tool to accomplish this end goal? Because let's face it, with the layers and layers of taxes, ordinances, regulations that we are forced to comply with, do we really own anything now? We pay taxes that benefit this city already. Why do we have to pay an additional fee as landlords? And if we have to pay it, why don't all homeowners have to pay it also? Are they not kept up to the same standard? Another thought I can't get out of my head is this has a feeling of extortion to it. The mafia is at our back door of our business telling us we need to pay the pizzo, the protection money, to guarantee the protection of our business and properties. We are adults who work hard to manage our properties and business. Brian is a skilled carpenter. We don't need anyone telling us how to maintain or keep our property safe. Our tenants are adults who sign a legal contract with us stating they will do their part to keep it safe. Why does the city government think they need to be in the middle of this legal contract between adults? Plus, we all know how the government works. Once this new Rental Ready ordinance is passed, it will never go away. The fees and stipulations will only increase each year, and the citizen and small business owner landlord will have no choice but to pay the pizzo. We are also perfectly capable of doing background checks on our potential tenants. Do you realize how many calls we get? Do you really want to do a background check on everybody? I recently had to fill 4 rental unit vacancies. Over the course of 3 to 4 weeks, I kept track of how many contacts I had for people actively searching for rental properties in Harrisonville. I had almost 200 contacts. I did all the screenings myself. This is my business. I will continue to do all the screenings myself. If there's a problem in this town with rental properties, it needs to be addressed directly. There is no reason to punish good landlords who are actively trying to improve their community and business. In our business, when there's a problem, we address it directly. We don't make each of our tenants pay for what 1 or 2 bad tenants have done. That would not be fair or good business. This is our hometown, and we have deep roots and don't need a government-paid official to tell us how to manage our properties. This is insulting and blatant government overreach.
Ms. Wooten? Ms. Wooten,
Who is speaking? Hello.
your 3 minutes are up, unless you'd like to ask for additional time.
Can I have additional time, please? I have one more page to read here.
Raise your hand if you want to approve.
Thank you. The way it looks to us is that the city needs revenue. Is this a money grab? This is in no way helps the landlord or tenant. Like I said, this is the pizza. Just like the utilities ordinance, now making landlords pay the outstanding bills of tenants that move out. Our tenants are not our dependents. They are grown adults who sign a legal contract with the city to pay their utilities. We as landlords are in no way a part of that contract. This is unconstitutional in every way. It is government overreach. We should not have to pay a fee for the courtesy of knowing if a tenant is on a shutoff list. We support our local police, men and women. We are interested in being a part of the Neighborhood Watch program that was mentioned. This is something that the entire community can support, participate, and reap the benefits. Brian and I already provide daily repetitive surveillance of our properties and surrounding areas. We drive around constantly and stop at our properties. We make eye contact and speak to people. We build relationships. They know we're watching. They know we will be back. We are invested. And don't forget about COVID. How does this look for the city to be taxing small business owners on the heels of a pandemic? The cost of lumber to do repairs of any kind at this point are outrageous. Everything is going up. The tenants are struggling to pay rent, and now the city wants to add to our expense? I mean, get real. This tax will trickle down to the tenants. We all know that. Does the city want to burden the citizens paying rent in this community who are struggling already? Food, gas, taxes, everything has gone up. Now this. It appears to me heartless, really, with everything else that's going on at this point in our country and in our town. At the town hall meeting, open discussion was discouraged. The city administration didn't want to hear citizens' opinions on the subject. Many landlords spoke up anyway. Rental Ready was obviously unanimously opposed, and there was a large number of landlords present. We assumed our voices were heard and taken into consideration. Obviously, it was not. I did not want to be a part of the committee to discuss the program because I am 100% opposed. Many landlords I spoke with didn't want to be on the committee or attend tonight because they feel their voice isn't heard. The decision had already been made. And they also didn't want to come tonight because they fear retribution for opposing the city in any manner. I believe it is time that elected officials at all levels of government realize we, the people, are free people protected by the Constitution, and many of these ordinances are a violation of our rights. In closing, we find it our obligation to our tenants to make them aware of the outcome of this vote tonight, because if passed, this will affect them and their rent, and they should know why and where it's coming from. I ask each of you to vote no on this proposed ordinance. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Wooten. And Mr. Lon Holden may approach the podium. Mr. Holden, I'd like to remind you, as I've reminded the others, of the need to speak with respect to the board and maintain decorum in the council chambers.
Absolutely.
And that being said, if you will give your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Yes, I will. My name is Lon Holden. I live at 2000 Thunderbird Drive here in Harrisonville. All right, great. Thank you all for the time tonight to speak and to voice my opinion. I own 8 rental properties here in Harrisonville. I've been a lifelong Harrisonville resident. The city has my name, my phone number. It's attached to each property. They know to call. If something gets shut off, it automatically goes to me. Everything's set. I was out of town just like Lawrence when the town hall meeting was held. But given the feedback, I assumed with the almost unanimous and negative feedback that it would be put on the shelf. So I was very surprised, as they were, to hear that it was brought back up. So when I inquired as to why, is there a groundswell of citizen unrest around rental properties, I was told, well, not really a groundswell, but we as elected officials get complaints. And my understanding was that the codes department, when a complaint comes in, is supposed to go out and investigate the complaint, and if found, they ticket them. I know they do me. I get a letter, my tenant gets a letter. Your grass is too high. There's an unlicensed vehicle on your property, etc. It's taken care of or we're cited. I'm assumed that happened elsewhere. But then I was told, well, most of the landlords are LLCs from out of town and we don't know how to get a hold of them. And if that's the case, then the question is, why not just pass an ordinance that says if you're a landlord, you're required to have a business license, you're required to list a property manager or a specific name and contact information and phone number so we can get a hold of you, and then treat them like you would any other code issue. You already have proactive codes enforcement going on, so why not just let the proactive codes enforcement go after these people just like they do me today? Why put another complex, expensive program in place that you know will just grow over time, unfortunately? I'm not against a business license. I think that's 100% fair. I will say this, I don't believe a residence is a place of business, however. It is a residence. I think if it were, then every town would require inspections. So that's why I don't think inspections are necessary or needed. If a landlord owns a property, as Lawrence said, you're going to want to keep it up. So I really had 4 main concerns. One was the cost of inspections. I felt there will be no cost to the inspections. And if that's the case, I'd certainly, if you were to vote yes, like to see that in writing, a guarantee for a certain number of years. Not that I'm advocating you vote yes at all. Second is the subjectivity of inspections. For those of us who have owned Section 8 properties in the past or currently, I know how subjective inspections can be. and this is not a knock against this codes department, but probably every one of us also has nightmarish experiences with the codes department in terms of enacting codes. And with the subjectivity of the codes, that's a concern, to be quite honest.
Mr. Holden, your 3 minutes are up.
Okay, one more minute. All right.
Okay, 1 minute.
Great. Third is if there is a code violation, who's responsible? So if my tenant has an unlicensed vehicle in their driveway, and you say, Lon, hey, I have an unlicensed vehicle in their driveway, well then, is that my job to have that towed? Are you going to revoke my business license because they have an unlicensed vehicle? That's not my issue. But this would target the landlord if that's the issue. Or I'm forced to evict them, in which case I'm usually out 2 months' rent. And lastly, this will require us to raise rents. There's no getting around it. Together with the utility rule of being stuck with the utility payment, and now this, you have to raise rents. I mean, taxes are going up, insurance is going up. As landlords, we have to raise rents. And this is just going to be another way or another program that we can't get around it. Because there's going to be issues every time an inspection happens. And you've got to figure that in. And so, yes, rents will be raised. And unfortunately, as with any time we raise rent, we let the tenants know why. So I would, as with them, encourage you to vote no on the program, address it directly with those landlords. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Holden. Moving on then to the approval of the minutes. The minutes of the Board of Aldermen regular meeting, June 7th. You've had those in your packet. I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion from Alderman Reese with a second from Alderman Dorhoff. All in favor of approving those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Those minutes stand approved as printed. The minutes of the Board of Aldermen work session, June 7th. Again, they've been in your packet, so I would entertain a motion.
Move to approve.
Second.
Have a motion from Alderman Turner with a second from Alderman Milner. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. The minutes of the work session stand approved as printed. At this point, I would ask you please to mute your cell phones if you haven't already done so. And then we'll move on to the agenda items. The Community Church Block Party. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. Before you tonight, it's probably a familiar request because we just had this earlier this year. The community church had a block party. They had such a good turnout, such a good time. They'd like to do it a couple more times, so they're coming back for additional dates of June 26th and July 24th to have a block party, blocking off just Chapel Drive there for a short distance. We are recommending approval. We had absolutely no problems with the first one. Entertain any questions.
Any questions for the Chief from the members of the board? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion for approval.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion from Alderman Milner with a second from Alderman Turner to approve the Community Church Block Party. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. Okay, moving on then. That one stands approved, and now moving on to Life Issues Recovery. Life Issues Recovery Walk.
Yes, this is a familiar one too. This has been going on for many years now, probably 8 or 9. It's a request from Life Issues, which is a ministry of Heartland Fellowship Baptist Church, to do a walk. They start at the Cass County Justice Center and walk out to Heartland Baptist Church. The majority of this is outside of city limits, but there is a short portion in the city, so they're requesting basically use of walking on the road. Have no concerns with that other than it is, and they've always done it on the Friday night before Labor Day weekend, and there's a lot of traffic going to the lake, but they've never had a problem. They start and get done before dark, so we recommend approval as well.
Questions of Chief on this event? Seeing no questions or discussion, I'd entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion from Alderman Dorhoff with a second from Alderman Reese. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. That event permit stands approved. Moving on to Council Bill 52.
Second reading of Council Bill 52 is a ordinance of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Harrisonville amending Chapter 605 of the Harrisonville Municipal Code to enact the City of Harrisonville Rental Ready Program and establishing effective date. Second reading of Council Bill 052.
So this is a second reading, but I would entertain any items for discussion from members of the board. Alderman Turner.
With this program, I mean, it's just rental houses, but does that also include, I mean, like the trailer parks where they don't own the houses, but I mean, they pay a lot rent?
So we have members of the staff here that can address questions from members of the board. Mr. Ratliff, I would let you either respond or direct that question to a member of your staff.
Yes, it would include those rental lots as well.
Yeah.
Now, the reason is because you have a pedestal there, you have electric, water, sewer connections there. Within 2 days of someone placing a mobile home trailer there, they would have someone living in that unit. It wouldn't be fair for other landlords that have units, stationary units or houses, that they would be paying it, and somebody else that could have someone within 2 days living there not paying it.
Okay. And then also, is it just for rental homes or rental businesses included in this?
Well, businesses already get a business license and they're already getting inspections. We already do inspections, from fire inspections, codes inspections. All those
Because of that.
inspections are already happening.
So this would just mimic that.
Right, similar. Now, it won't be as intensive as the businesses inspections are. In business inspections, you have the fire department going inside, checking things inside, codes department going inside, checking things that are within inside. With this program, they're not going inside.
Okay.
Other questions from members of the board? Alderman Mills?
Or probably Chris, I don't know. So to answer Lon's question on a vacant car or abandoned car, so is that the owner or obviously it belongs to the tenant. Where are you going with that, to answer that question?
Okay. It's really no different for any specific code violation. So first thing we do is try to deal with the tenant, obviously. It's usually their issue. But if that fails, then by state law, we have to go to the deed holder. So if we can't get what we need from a tenant, then we have to go down the line. Because if we do something that's abated, then we're sending a bill, and if it's not paid, our only other recourse is to lien a property, and we can't, a tenant has no standing as far as a lien would go. So yeah, we try to go with the tenant and see if we can get something fixed up. But then a lot of times we do end up having to contact the landlord, and the final responsibility would be with the landlord.
So when the inspection was done initially.
We can't do from the
I'm sorry, sir, you're not allowed to speak from the crowd. I apologize. Other questions from the alderman? Alderman Turner?
So, you said the inspection on the houses is not as invasive as business, but if we require landlords to have a business license, and which would then cover inspections, whatnot, the fee per unit is that? Because if the businesses already have the business license and inspections and pay that, they're not paying any extra, but yet for this rental ready, we're going to charge an extra $14 per unit to cover inspections.
They pay for those inspections. Those commercial businesses pay for that.
Do
You all
they?
just approved one not too long ago for some of the larger businesses in town.
Okay, yeah.
And the inspections that were improved with that, and the false alarms that the
Right,
the
yeah,
emergency was,
False alarms and
right,
stuff like that.
and all those things that were associated with that. So those are a part of those fees, and they range from the square footage size. And that's what Chris has been in discussion with you all about, how those need to be more equitable on those businesses, where you're not charging the same for a small business as you would a large.
Well, that was for false alarms, but, so we charge more for bigger business, for inspections?
Go ahead, Chris.
Go ahead, Chris. Mr. Arthur?
So in addition to the business license annual fee, any new business pays a $50 original occupancy inspection fee.
That's new
Now,
business.
they're only inspected by us that initial time.
Right.
Now, the rental ready program, we'd be looking at the exterior only of the properties every 3 years.
And there's no fee for that, outside of the $14 annual fee.
Right.
Well, there is the $14 per
Annual.
unit, okay? Now, that covers, and we kind of went over this in our work session and board meeting, that covers, some of it does cover our inspection cost. Some of it covers the database and maintaining the database. And so that is the fee. Mhm.
What are your expectations on the turnaround time on the background checks? If that goes in that direction, I understand that's no charge also, but is that a 36-hour, a 3-day deal? I mean, if you get 10 background checks.
Alderman Mills, I'm
what's-
going to let Chief Hofer, since it's his department that will be doing that,
Yeah.
I'll let him answer for you.
Yeah, what we're going to do is develop a form, and Detective Hunsicker will be in charge of the background checks. We're going to check local records. I mean, we're not going to go super, super deep. We're going to look to make sure that, we're trying to get them better tenants, people that maybe don't have drug issues or try and sell drugs, and keep we're there to help them keep their properties clean, maybe drug-free. That's our goal. But it'll depend on her schedule. It may be a week. It may be a week and a half, depending if she's on vacation. She works 4 days. She works 4 10-hour shifts a week.
And it would be in the tenant, and by law, the chief can't just get a name from somebody and run a background. That tenant has to sign that form that they're okay for the background check. So we're not going to field the calls for them.
Okay.
That landlord would have to say, you have to make an appointment with the police department if they want that background check. Now, a landlord could say, I don't want the background check. I mean, they don't have to. But if they want to, that person would have to sign the release to the police department to do that background check.
Okay, yeah. I had a legal question, but that, I think, covers that, yeah.
Right.
Where we were going legally, okay.
Would you, while you're at the podium, would you address the question that was raised about criminals hiding in bushes and the vagrancy issue?
Okay.
And why-
I was in the hall, and you can't hear real well out there, so I'll do my best, but I think it was.
In other words, pardon me for interrupting, but in other words, be descriptive of what the police department would do.
We're going to tag along with the codes department. We are going to look at the outside of the property. We are going to make recommendations to make it a little bit safer. Do they have proper lighting? Do they have trimmed bushes? Do they have an address that's visible for first responders to get there? That's what we're going to look at. We're going to make recommendations, not requirements. I've been through the SEPTED up in Kansas City in that training, and they talk about trimming bushes and doing things like that so people can't hide in them. We don't have problems right now with people hiding in bushes now. But we're just trying to help the landlords, help the tenants, make it a little bit safer.
And hasn't there been a program across the state of Missouri for many years called multi-housing something?
Crime-free
multi-housing, yes, which exists for the very same purpose of trying to make sure that properties are safer.
Right.
Yeah. So this is not something new. This is something that's been done across the state by other police departments.
Yeah.
Right.
Probably about 10 years ago, I attended that training with a couple of my officers. They're both now detectives up in Kansas City, and it's crime-free multi-housing. And
Right.
we went out with them and did home inspections on different properties. And theirs is a lot more in-depth.
Right.
Ours is not going to be. We'll take it to the extent that the landlords want us to.
Yes.
But we're just there to be helpful.
Perfect. Thank you, Chief. Other questions from members of the board?
Yes.
Alderman Reese?
This is just a wrap-up for me, because I think that everyone here sitting on the board has struggled with this as well as you all have. We want to do what's the right thing for the citizens and for the landlords. I personally am a landlord myself, and so I'm kind of looking at both sides of this. As I understand it, in a nutshell, as a landlord, I'm going to have to pay $50 for a business license. Please correct me anytime I'm wrong. And I'm going to have to pay, $14 for each unit. So I'm a small business person. I have one house, and I have another house that has 2 apartments. So I would have 3 units that I would be paying $14 for. So I would be doing that every year, correct? The 14 every year and the $50 every year. And in return for that, as I understand it, the police department and the codes department will come by my properties and look at only the outside of them. And as they look at the outside of them, they will be looking for recommendations to make the property safer. Question being, are you going to be looking for scaling paint, for broken windows, are you going to be looking at those sorts of things? Chris, I'm going to ask you that one, please.
Go ahead, Mr. Arthur.
Yeah, in a nutshell, yes.
Okay.
We will be looking at some exterior things.
Okay. Are these the things that are already being considered in a regular codes inspection?
Some of them are in the regular property maintenance code.
Okay, so there won't, as I understand it, there won't be a whole lot of difference in that part of the inspection.
No, there'll be an extra focus on life safety on the outside. So stairways and rails that aren't broken,
Okay.
things like that.
Okay, and as you accumulate those suggestions, either from the police department or from the codes department, those things will not be requested, they will be not required, but recommended?
If they're actually life safety items, then they will be required.
Okay, could you give me an example, please?
Yeah, say you had a landing and 5 stairs going down, but no handrail.
Okay,
Then you would be required to put in a handrail.
okay. Okay, if my bushes are too bushy or too high?
No, bushes would not be a requirement. That's the kind of thing that would strictly be recommendation.
Suggestions, okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
Same thing with like security lighting. And then as far as smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms, which are probably the 2 most important life safety things in any home, rental or owner occupied. A landlord will simply have a place to certify that they have them in the home on the business license application. But if they'd like us to take a look at them and make sure they're in the right spots and functioning, then there'll be no charge to go in if they'd like us to. We'll
okay, at the landlord's request.
That's correct.
What about at the tenant's request?
Well, per our property maintenance code, tenants always have the right to ask us to come visit with them, both inside and outside. The law is basically whoever controls the property. So, for all practical purposes, a tenant controls access to the inside of that property.
Okay, super.
So they
Okay.
can always ask for it.
Okay, last observation, may have just gone right over my head. I guess I'll let it go there. Oh, no, I know what it was. So this inspection, the inspection would occur every 3 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, okay. I think that's all I need. Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Alderman Turner?
So, I mean, rental homes are governed and watched by codes just like regular owner homes. I mean, we're all under the same codes and rules and stuff. And if say that most of our LLC, or we don't have a name or number or way to get hold of them, I mean, if we just required a business license of them to have a name and number, contact person and stuff, that just the cost of the business license alone would cover the cost to develop and maintain a database. I mean, it's more than that. I mean, with the other statistics, whether they're true or not, I mean, there's a lot of owner homes out there that have a lot of code violations that are ran down that are dumpy, and I mean, we have codes to fix them up. And the rental, I really don't see any different with. And then you say we don't have a name or nothing to get a hold of the deed person. Well, if we require a business license, then we would have that information. And then that would cover the cost here of what it would take to maintain and store the database.
So is your question about the discrepancy between code violations between rental properties and owner-occupied properties?
Yes. Well, I mean,
Mr. Arthur, can you speak to that? I think the 65-35% question.
I got to say, I wasn't really getting the question
Yeah.
yet. But,
Well-
okay,
well,
but let me speak to the.
Here, I mean-
So, and we really have no absolute way of knowing because we have no database. But I've looked at this first part of the year, and Mr. Smith is pretty right on. I mean, the split on code cases between what we think are rental properties versus owner-occupied, it is running right in there close with what we think the split on households is in the city. Owner-occupied versus rental. We have no way without the databases. I'm looking for two things this year, if possible. The database, so I know exactly how many rentals we have, and the new census numbers, which aren't out yet. But for now, the numbers are showing that a few things. We don't target any individual, any one or the other, basically. We number one, our department, we don't have enough people to target or profile anybody. We're complaint based. So the correlation between these percentages is, I think, to be expected for right now. If we have a better database, that could change these numbers. But I can't say for certain until we have that information whether it's 50-50 on code cases where it's only 60-40 on household. So Matt, does that answer? Yeah.
Okay. Alderman Mills?
In the Somewhere in one presentation, when's the implementation, if this was passed,
August 22.
the implementation of these fees, it seems like it was going to be a while, like the business license now is 35 going to 50. You're giving everybody several months or a year's warning or something. What's the timeline on that?
It's
Mr. Ratliff?
Oh, I'm sorry.
August 22.
It'd be next year, for August, so when we would do the normal business license that would go out and renewals, would be the deadline that goes out for that. Because several different reasons, as we discussed in those meetings, which is, one is we are sensitive to the issues with COVID and the issues that are going on and giving time to get further down the road from that. Secondly is to make sure that we get the correct information out. There's been a lot of misinformation that's been going around on it. So we want to make sure that everybody fully understands. And thirdly is to, for the city to be prepared too. You know, because we don't want to slow anybody up or cause any interference along that matter. And as we continue to discuss and educate along the way, that we can be able to implement that. And so that's, and if you remember, a lot of the rental ready programs, I don't know if it was based in Europe or not. I've never heard that before. It's a common practice across the nation. Here in the metropolitan area, there's several cities that have these rental ready programs. I have talked to some landlords that have a rental ready program they deal with in another city, and it's a lot more stringent in that city. And when I explained to them what the requirement is in Harrisonville, they said, well, that's not near what they're asking up there. And I said, exactly. We're not implementing what everybody else is doing. We tried to tailor it for Harrisonville. And biggest part of it is to make sure that we're addressing the issues that continue to come to the board, and the board asked staff to look at what can be done to try to address these issues. And it's not just the rental ready program. We did the enforcement side. You all seen the stats on that, where the enforcement side in a year's time tripled on that. This is another portion of it, which is the rental ready program, which would be, especially for the information and the outside of those properties. We're not interested in going inside. And the third part is that we're bringing, as some of the aldermen have been setting in on that steering committee with the 353 program, to offer tax abatement for improvements to property, so that any landlord that is improving their property would be abated any value or taxation for that improvement. And so we've had to approach it, because these are three large things that we're doing. But we're not done, and we're hoping by essentially this fall to bring that 353 program to you all and finalize it, so that we can also get that information out before this is implemented and before it's enacted, to, if a landlord decides to do a bunch of improvements to his property and he's within the boundaries of the district that you create, that they will be abated taxes on it. And that's because we're not looking at trying to generate revenue from it. We're trying to address the issues that continually come to the board, and staff was directed by the board to come up with solutions to address the complaints that continually come to the board. So that's why we've made it such a long process to get there, is trying to be sensitive to everybody, also making sure that we get the other program implemented as well, and then give the opportunity for even landlords to get tax abatement.
So you said August, but you meant August of 2022.
22.
Correct.
So you got over a year before they get their first $50 bill, or
Or the
my
deadline.
business license goes
Right.
to $50.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Correct. Any other questions from the members of the board?
And I just, I
Alderman Milner?
Sorry, because everybody wants to hear my voice. I found it interesting that, and I know one of the questions that we've heard so much about is the fact that the business license is $50. Well, considering the business license hasn't increased in our community since 1997, I'd say it's probably definitely something that we needed to look into. But the $14, which comes out to about, what, $1.15 a month? I understand that's $14. I think the thing to make sure we understand, if I'm not correct, is as this stands now to pass, this cannot change fee-wise unless this board approves it. Is that a correct statement?
Correct.
So if anything were to change, any fees were to go up, any inclusions into this, it has to come before the board, correct?
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to make sure.
All right, seeing no further questions, I will entertain a motion on Council Bill 52.
I make a motion to approve the Council Bill number 52 as read twice before this Board of Aldermen.
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion from Alderman Franklin with a second from Alderman Milner. May I have roll call, please?
Alderman Milner,
Aye.
Alderman Franklin,
Aye.
Alderman Reese,
Aye.
Alderman Dorhoff,
Aye.
Alderman Turner,
Nay.
Alderman Mills,
Aye.
Alderman Zaring is absent, and Alderman Davidson is absent.
Thank you. Council Bill 52 is approved and becomes Ordinance 3549. Item D, the hearing regarding the performance of municipal waste. We'll pause just a moment and let these folks leave. Pardon me, Mr. Frederick, if you guys need to have a conversation, you could step outside. Okay. All right, moving on to item D then, the hearing regarding the performance of municipal waste. Mr. Ratliff, are you driving on this one?
Essentially, the board, if you recall from the last meeting, voted to terminate the contract as of August 1st with the opportunity of having Mr. Moore come tonight to discuss if things have improved to the manner that you wanted to rescind the termination of the contract for August 1st. Mr. Moore is in the audience.
Mr. Moore is in the audience. Questions from the board or comments from the board? Alderman Turner?
I have one. I was outside tonight when my trash was picked up, mine was fine, and then went down to my neighbor's, and he took the top trash bag and threw it on the ground, and took some other bags out, threw it in the truck and other stuff, and then they drove off. The lady came out of the house hollering, "Hey, what's wrong?" You know, and he said, "Hey, it's too heavy. I'm doing this by hand," and then refused to come back and pick up anything else, and left the other bag on the ground. And then last week, our trash was day late and recycle in yard waste, but truck was come by. I was outside, and truck come by and picked up the recycle, and I noticed a few houses down the street they skipped that one, and then again my neighbors they skipped that one. I mean, they seen it and drove on. Maybe they didn't have it recycled correctly. I don't know, you know, but they just kept skipping, you know. And by tonight, my trash was picked up. The recycle has not. Still. So. And I had a lot of complaints last week from the south part of town, and there for a couple weeks he was doing really good, really improved, but it seems to have fallen back.
Okay. Other members of the board getting complaints still?
Yeah.
Alderman Dorhoff?
Yes.
I'm still getting lots of complaints. I talked to Brian last week, because our trash day is on Monday around our area, and most of the homes did not have recycling picked up until Wednesday after I called in, and finally got picked up Wednesday late afternoon. But even just today, our trash was just picked up about 10 minutes ago, and the yard waste and the recycling is still there. So I doubt that it'll get picked up tonight. And so I'm still getting a lot of complaints.
Alderman Franklin?
Yes, so have I. I had one resident contact me, and she's a smaller woman. She only has like 2 or 3 bags of trash in her container. She personally saw the guy pick up 1 bag and left the other 2 in her container. I have had another resident call me or contact me and let me know that their trash was picked up, but there were a couple of bags that were left in a culvert or a sewer ditch by their home. So yes, the complaints are still coming in.
Alderman Reese?
Yeah, I've had several complaints. I have to find this a little amusing. I was hospitalized last week with a heart problem, and I was clear out at Olathe, and I got 2 trash calls while I was in the bed. And we had a nice little chat. Bottom line is that, yes, I have had some calls myself. So.
Alderman Mills, comments?
Well, no, but I read the contract, and there's several issues with the contract versus the experience and the complaints that we've been having. So it's beyond just picking up the trash. Some of his the business practices that have gone on, and then the photographs of wherever those dumpsters were in a C2, which is in violation, and we're going to have to get that cleaned up as far as the safety of the city, and let alone the smell reported, but the rodents and whatever's going to happen in that situation. That's ridiculous. That there's obviously deeper issues here than not picking up our trash, and so I wasn't here that night, but your decision needs to go forth to terminate this thing, in my opinion, and we've got to move on. You got 2 other cities reportedly doing the same thing we're doing, same issues. It's a deeper issue than not picking up our trash.
Is that a motion?
I would make a motion to act on your previous decision, yes.
So I have a motion to uphold the decision to terminate municipal waste effective August 1st.
Second.
And I have a second from Alderman Dorhoff. May I have a roll call, please?
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Franklin.
Aye.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
Alderman Mills.
Aye.
Alderman Dorhoff.
Aye.
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
Alderman Davidson is absent, and Alderman Zaring is absent.
All right, thank you. Then by majority of the board, the the decision has been upheld to terminate municipal waste services effective August 1st. Moving on then to item E, Council Bill 53.
Council Bill 53 is a resolution of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Harrisonville, Missouri, to authorize the City Administrator to accept the annual audit for the year ending December 31, 2020 by Dana F. Cole and Company and establishing an effective date.
Good evening, sir.
Hi, I'm Kim Pearson. I'm with the auditing firm Dana Cole and Company. We're out of Overland Park, Kansas, and we conducted the audit this year of the comprehensive annual financial report. And as you can see in that report that you've received, there's a lot of information that's included in that. All of that comes from the city's financial records. The presentation this year, we weren't your auditors in the prior year, so this is a new report for us, but you can see in that presentation that it's very similar to what you had in the prior year. It's got the same primary sections, starting with the introductory section. That comes from the city management. The next part is our auditor's report, and that's the most important part of what we do as an auditor. We provide an opinion on these financial statements. And as you read through that auditor's report, we're given an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, and that is the best opinion possible as a result of our audit. What it means is those financial statements are fairly presented in all material respects. So you can rely on these financial statements to be accurate for that purpose. Following that auditor's report, we've got the management discussion and analysis. And if there's any part that you really want to read through, I would recommend reading through that. It gives some summary information. It also provides some tables that compare to the prior year. And it has some narratives as well, just to kind of help you understand what the financial statements are saying. That's from management is what that's from, but that is a part of the total report as well. After that, we've got the basic financial statements, and I'm sure you guys are aware of this, but it was really good to see that the sales tax revenues upheld, during this pandemic time. That was really good to see. We are actually seeing that in municipalities where they're near a major highway or interstate. So that was just good to see that those sales tax revenues were upheld there. You're probably also aware the community center revenues, had a significant decrease just because of the service revenue that wasn't collected during the year. You'll see that as you look through that auditor's report. Two of the main points that we noticed there. Included in the basic financial statements then also are our note disclosures. Again, those are presented in a similar manner to what they were in the year before. And probably the most significant note disclosure that we have there is the one relating to long-term debt. It discloses the terms of all the different debt issuances that the city has had, any new issuances that occurred, and the payments. And then it also provides us a summary schedule of what's due in the coming years for the city obligations there. Following that, there's additional supplementary information, and then there's some additional statistical information there as well, some of which covers a 10-year span. So those of you that haven't seen a comprehensive annual report like this, you can kind of look at that and see the trends of certain information of the city. And then lastly, we've also got a report on internal control and compliance regarding the testing that we did with our procedures. And for compliance, we don't have any items that we need to address that would have a material effect on the financial statements. For internal control, the only item that we're reporting on there is us as auditors putting this draft financial statement together and then just recommending some year-end adjusting entries. We'll be providing those to Kim Hubbard to post to the city records. It's nothing unusual. Those adjusting entries are for year-end adjustments only and didn't really have an impact on any of the monthly information that you guys were receiving during your monthly board meetings. So overall, it's a very clean audit. Appreciate all the assistance that we had from all staff members that we worked with. The audit did go very well. With this being a first year that we were auditors, we had to do some additional procedures for beginning balances and stuff. I know we're presenting in June here. I'd anticipate, we'd be presenting the end of April, possibly May for future years is kind of what that outlook would be for you. But again, the audit did go very well and appreciated all the help that we received. I can take any questions, or if anybody has questions at any time during the year as well, they can feel free to contact us and we can address any concerns that you guys might have.
Would you leave your business card with each member of the board?
I don't have them
Okay.
on me.
All right.
I might have them out in my vehicle that I can bring back in.
Okay,
if that
that'll
would
be
all
fine.
right.
That'll be fine.
Where do you want me to drop them off at?
You can leave them, just leave them right there in the corner of that table. We'll
Okay,
get them.
I'll just
Yeah.
come in here in just a
Excellent.
few minutes. Okay.
Excellent. Questions from members of the board?
Okay.
If not, thank you very much.
Yes, thank you. I'll get those and bring those in.
So I would entertain a motion then for the approval of Council Bill 53.
Make a motion to approve.
A second.
Have a motion from Alderman Dorhoff with a second from Alderman Franklin. Roll call, please.
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
Alderman Mills.
Aye.
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
Alderman Dorhoff.
Aye.
Alderman Franklin.
Aye.
Alderman Davidson is absent, and Alderman Zaring is also absent.
Thank you. Council Bill 53 is approved and becomes Resolution 031. Council Bill 54.
Council Bill 54 is a resolution of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Harrisonville authorizing the City Administrator to enter into an agreement with Walden Company Incorporated and All American Display Fireworks to provide a fireworks display for the general public on July 4th, 2021.
Chief Myler.
Good evening. This is the normal yearly annual for the resolution for approval of fireworks in the park. Walden Company has done the fireworks for probably the last 10, 15 years, and have always put on I would say, a superb performance for the city. And I've really never heard any negative things from anybody from the city about the fireworks display that they put on. This is staff recommends approval. Greg Price is usually the pyrotechnics guy, and he's very safe in his setup. He lets the fire department be involved and make recommendations if he has something that's just not completely looks right to us. And it's good at giving us feedback on things. So staff recommends approval. Any questions?
Any questions for Chief Myler or Mr. Perky, who also is in the room? Okay. Seeing no questions or discussion from members of the board, I'd entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion from Alderman Milner with a second from Alderman Turner. A roll call, please.
Alderman Mills.
Aye.
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Franklin.
Aye.
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
Alderman Dorhoff.
Aye.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
Alderman Zaring is absent, and Alderman Davidson is also absent.
Thank you. Council Bill 54 is approved and becomes Resolution R032. Council Bill 55.
Council Bill 55 is an ordinance of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Harrisonville establishing Section 605.180 of the Harrisonville Municipal Code to enact regulations on tree trimming services performed within Harrisonville city limits and establishing an effective date. First reading from Council Bill 055.
Is this Mr. Pollard?
It is.
Good evening. Mr. Pollard is with us by video conference, and he's going to speak to this council bill. Go right ahead.
This council bill has come apart, or this ordinance has been written up simply because of state statute and a number of issues that we've had recently with property owners not allowing or really having some concerns about the easements and right-of-ways that we are currently trimming to and cutting trees within. And what this is going to do is clarify the issue for those aldermen and the mayor and others that may get those questions. It makes it easier for everyone to be on the same page. This also shows the state law that is requiring us to maintain our right-of-ways. There are also a number of other issues that this addresses, number one being that we have to give the property owners proper notice and making sure that we are notifying the property owners. I've done that in this ordinance, and also any bills that our contractors turn in now, they're required to have a signed form about the cutting of trees. And I'll entertain any questions.
They're snickering because you were buffering a bit and you sounded a little bit, yeah. Questions of Mr. Pollard regarding this?
I apologize.
That's okay. We know how it is out at the farm. So any questions of Mr. Pollard?
That's kind of like that.
Any questions of Mr. Pollard about the tree trimming ordinance? I'm really glad that we're doing this. It's important. You're making good progress in trimming those trees and eliminating some of the habitat of some of the squirrels in town. So if there are no questions or discussion from members of the board, I'd entertain a motion.
Make a motion to suspend the rule and go to the second reading.
I have a motion from Alderman Dorhoff with a second from Alderman Mills to suspend the rule on Council Bill 56 and advance it to its second reading. A roll call, please. I'm sorry, 55, my mistake.
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
Alderman Franklin.
Aye.
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Dorhoff.
Aye.
Alderman Mills. Alderman Zaring and Alderman Davidson are absent.
And second reading.
Council Bill 055 is an ordinance of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Harrisonville establishing Section 605.180 of the Harrisonville Municipal Code to enact regulations on tree trimming services performed within Harrisonville city limits and establishing effective date. Second reading, Council Bill 055.
And a roll call again.
Alderman Dorhoff.
Aye.
Alderman Franklin.
Aye.
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
Alderman Mills.
Aye.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Zaring is absent, and Alderman Davidson is absent.
Council Bill 55 is approved and becomes ordinance 3550. Council Bill 56.
Council Bill 56 is an ordinance of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Harrisonville vacating unimproved east-west alley right-of-way subject to retention of public utility easement between the rear property lines of 501 West Wall Street and 500 West Mechanic Street in Harrisonville, Cass County, Missouri, and establishing effective date. First reading, Council Bill 056.
Mr. Crow, good evening.
If I could, good evening, and if I could direct you to page 152 in your staff report, I'll be speaking from that aerial. Mr. Lyndall Leatherman at 501 West Wall and I started talking about a fence application that he has to put up a new fence in his backyard and determining where his rear property line ended and the alley began. As you can see, if you look at that aerial, the alley is highlighted in yellow. It doesn't go anywhere. It's never been improved. There is an electric line across the top of it. So I suggested to him that, what we might want to do is vacate the alley, subject to the city retaining utility easement, which is standard practice, so that we can fix the electric line if we need to, but vacate it. He would pick up an additional 7.5 feet. His neighbor, who is at 500 Mechanic Street, would pick up an additional 7.5 feet. We sent out the letters to everybody in the block, didn't get any objections. Got one call asking, is it the east-west alley or is it the north-south alley, which is Butler Terrace, I guess, and clarified that. And so we're recommending approval. And again, there were no objections from the neighbors. Mr. Leatherman's in the audience.
Questions of Mr. Crow or Mr. Leatherman? Good evening, Mr. Leatherman. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Make a motion, we approve.
Second.
All right, this is an ordinance.
It's an ordinance, okay. Make a motion, we suspend the rules. Move it to the second reading.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. I have a motion from Alderman Mills with a second from Alderman Milner to suspend the rule on Council Bill 56 and advance it to its second reading. Roll call, please.
Alderman Dorhoff.
Aye.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
Alderman Franklin.
Aye.
Alderman Mills.
Aye.
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Zaring is absent, and Alderman Davidson is absent.
And second reading.
Council Bill 056, an ordinance of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Harrisonville vacating unimproved east-west alley right-of-way subject to retention of public utility easement between the rear property lines of 501 West Wall Street and 500 West Mechanic Street in Harrisonville, Cass County, Missouri, and establishes its effective date. Second reading, Council Bill 056.
And a roll call, please.
Alderman Franklin.
Aye.
Alderman Milner.
Aye.
Alderman Mills.
Aye.
Alderman Reese.
Aye.
Alderman Turner.
Aye.
Alderman Dorhoff.
Aye.
Alderman Zaring is absent, and Alderman Davidson is absent.
Thank you. Council Bill 56 is approved and becomes ordinance 3551. Thank you again, sir, for being with us. Moving on then to Council Bill 56. I'm sorry.
No, public hearing.
So it's a public hearing. You're still with us, Mr.
Yes,
Crow?
yes.
The public hearing then, which was continued from June 7th.
Yes, this matter was continued from the last board meeting so that staff and the applicant could have time to perfect some of the stipulations. You may recall that we approved a special use permit in the middle of 2019 for a transfer station at 2701 Brick Plant Road. Since that time, the applicant's been working with DNR on getting the operating permits that they need to operate. In that process, there's a couple things that have come up that required us to amend the stipulations that were initially approved. There's 4 changes that are being proposed. This is recommended by both the Planning Commission and the staff for approval. First is the applicant wanted to start taking in bulk items like large appliances, washers, dryers. What they would do, if you look at the, again on page 171, if you look at that page, the picture on that page and on the top of the next page, you'll see that what they're proposing to do is store those bulk items in a 40-foot storage container until it's full, ship it out, and then put in another one. The storage containers at the back of the building, you can't see it really from the road. It's in a trough that was previously for some dock-high doors, unloading and unloading at some dock-high doors. We see no problem with that. The second item, which really came from a comment from DNR, is originally all the leachate or the liquid leachate that accumulates at the end of the day. Every day they, and they can explain more about the process, but at the end of the day they clean where all the trash is deposited, put into a large compactor, and from there it will go to the to the landfill. But at the end of the day, there's residual liquid leachate. In the initial SUP, all that was to go to the landfill. The DNR said we don't want it going to the landfill. We want it to go to through the sanitary sewer. And so we've been working with them on stipulations that are precautionary, since you don't know for sure what kind of debris is going to be brought in there. I will say that this facility operated for approximately 10, 11 years as a transfer station. Previously, we're not aware of any problems that it caused because the leachate then did go through the sewer and into the sewer treatment plant. We're not aware of any problems that it caused, but we're doing several things as precaution that both staff, Public Works, and the applicant agree with. One, they're going to install a grease interceptor. There hasn't been one there in the past. It'll be cleaned monthly. Clean-out reports will be furnished to the city. Second, they'll be doing a pretty extensive test of the leachate approximately 60 days after full operations begin, and then 6 months thereafter. And if there's any red flags that come out of that, Public Works and the applicant will figure out what needs to be done. We don't anticipate problems because one, it was a functioning transfer station in the past, but we want to just make sure that we are confident that there's not going to be anything that comes out that is going to cause problems for the sewer treatment plant. Third, we had a stipulation, no outdoor storage. This is an industrial area. I felt like that was a little bit too rigorous. They want to store empty trash bins there, and so we have a stipulation in here that they would be stored against the east property line, which is the farthest away from Brick Plant Road, and so outdoor storage would be allowed, but it would be at the back of the property. And then the fourth item was regarding the term. This was approved approximately 2 years ago as a 10-year term. Again, they haven't even been able to open yet because they've been going through the operating permit process, and so the Planning Commission reset the 10-year term to begin with the approval of the amended special use permit. In the audience is Gail Holzman, the president of American Waste Systems. His consultant, Kyle Kukut, with Blackstone Environmental is with us via Zoom, and then Bill Shelton, the property owner, is also here with us in the audience. So this is a public hearing.
At this point, I will open the public hearing. If there anyone in the audience that would like to address the board, you may step forward to the podium. Good evening, Mr. Holzman.
How's everybody?
We're good.
I've been on a trash truck all day, so I'm a little tired. Get of age, I can find I'm not really good with those toters. Gotta find some young guys, but it's hard to find young guys right now. It's unreal. Well, we've had quite an adventure the last 2 years. COVID, different things. You get in you don't know what you're doing. We're learning together. It's been a fun adventure, though. It hasn't been a really big problem. I just like to get it going now. And I think that's what we're here tonight. I worked with the guys, and we've really come to a good conclusion on working together and making sure that everybody's on the same page. I welcome anybody out to the transfer at any time. I own American Sweeping as well. I started in 1984. I've been cleaning floors for a long time. And I want that thing to be something we can be proud of. I want it to smell right. I want it to when you walk in it, you can be proud of it. It's not going to be like what you see out on 291 right now. Trash is not going to be laying out on the ground. It's going to be picked up. That's what we're going to do. So I do appreciate the opportunity for you guys to let me have this opportunity to make something in this town that's going to be a great jewel, because the trash thing, everybody's going through it right now. There's a lot of companies that are stressing over landfill increases. They're bidding too cheap. I mean, you're just seeing it all over. The Ronnie Deffenbaugh days are gone. He's gone. And things are going to change. I mean, as they change, we have to change with it. And to change with it, we have to be prepared. And for you allowing this to happen is the best weapon you can do, I promise you, because the landfill situation in the area is going to change. At least we can have somewhat of control what we can do with our streams. That's my sales pitch. Now I think I'm going to go eat a steak somewhere right across the street. So if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Questions of Mr. Holzman or Mr. Shelton or Mr. Crow?
Great.
All right. Thank you. I will close the public hearing, and I'd entertain a reading on Council Bill 57.
Council Bill 57 is an ordinance of the Board of Aldermen of the City of Harrisville, Cass County, Missouri, granting an amended 10-year special use permit to Gail T. Holzman, Jr. and American Waste Management to operate a solid waste transfer station at 2701 South Plant Road. First reading, Council Bill 057.
So once again, I would ask if there are questions or discussion from members of the board. Alderman Turner, you look like you're... Okay. You were just kind of leaning in there.
Yep.
All right, then I would entertain a motion.
I make a motion we should suspend the rules and move Council Bill 57 to a second reading.
Okay.
Second.
I have a motion from Alderman...
And Alderman Davidson is absent.
Thank you. Council Bill 57 is approved and becomes ordinance number 3552. Alderman and committee reports. I'll start with Alderman Dorhoff.
I don't have anything this evening.
Alderman Reese.
I do. Last week, I was admitted to the local hospital with pending heart attack, and I'm fine, thank you very much. But what I wanted to do, because I was transferred from the Cass Regional, I always get that wrong, up to Overland, Olathe Medical Center, and I went via the Harrisonville medical transfer. I'm not really sure what the proper name is there. But I will tell you that, number one, if you've never had that happen, that's kind of a frightening experience, especially if it's your first time, And number two, you're confused. And when you get in one of those things and you've got these kids, and when you're my age and they're running that sucker, they look like kids to you. They were the most professional, well-trained group of young men and women I have ever seen in that sort of a situation. And I would just like to, I'm planning to get you their names. I have them written down. I didn't bring them because I really want to personally thank them again. And I want to thank the entire department. We are blessed to have that service in Harrisonville, Missouri.
Excellent. Thank you, Alderman. Alderman Franklin.
I would like to say I saw some pictures from Grant right before the meeting. They have got the flooring in downstairs at the community center, so that's exciting. They have got some painting done, and it's moving along, and it looks like it's going to be really cool looking. They're excited about the final product and getting the equipment sold off on the auction. The first time around was good, and we're at it again, so I think we're doing good things there. I also wanted to thank Chris Arthur for his time this last week in helping me and Judy Reese both went in to talk with him about the Rental Ready program. We appreciate your time. I know you're really busy and have a lot going on right now, but we appreciate your efforts to try and keep us straight on this. And that's about all I have.
I would echo that, Chris. Thank you for spending the time with the alderwomen. Alderman Milner.
I just want to say I'm excited about the 4th of July fireworks. It's always good to get that in the books and get people something to really look forward to. I'm sure it will be wonderful. This year I have closer residents to go watch it from, so I'm really kind of excited about that one. The rental ready, I know, it's been a long drawn out process. I want to again thank Chris and Roger and everybody who put the time in for that. It's one of those things nobody wants to see, new bills and new rules, but sometimes as we grow as a community, we have to step up and grow along with it, and sometimes growing pains are hard, but I think we have a good step in the moving forward, and I'm sure we'll hit some bumps in the road, and they'll bring stuff back to us that we hadn't thought about, and we'll address that as we go, but appreciate your all's time and effort in that. The tree trimming, I have not had any phone calls about that, but
You're fortunate.
yeah,
Yes,
I know that's always a problem, and people think they own, everything right out to the road, but they have to be able to understand that. So I was really glad to see Andy doing that tonight and the effort that he's put forward with that. I have had a couple of questions about the pool, several discussions, and wondering why, where we are at. And I was going to ask Grant, do we know the RFQ on that? Have
Yeah.
we got new? Because that's what people are at. The
Either
one
one,
question
yeah.
was, so how long is that going to delay? I said, it's not.
The outdoor pool, the RFP came back and Grant took it to the park board and they recommended Royal Construction. It's going to be $707,000 for that. And if you all remember, because I heard, I still think Dennis ought to do a story with Facebook and his newspaper next to it on facts. But it's been said, why didn't we do it during COVID? Why did we wait till now? When it was closed during COVID, why didn't do it? If you all recall, we didn't know it was in this bad shape as it was, and because it was closed, when staff started noticing further cracks going on, and then had someone come in and look at it, we found that there were some cavities underneath it, and so then the discussion became of, well, we got more than just a patch here. We've got a bigger problem than that. Plus, we have to live within the budget you approve, and I didn't see anyone saying, "Hey, we got an extra $1 million. Let's just do it right now." And so we had to go through the process, and you all had to pass the COPs to be able to do that. Another story that's been said about it is we're illegally spending the money because that's for the ball fields. And if you all recall, we are doing this with the COPs, and the ball fields are not out of the question. That's part of the next phase that will come before you all to be able to approve the bonds for that as well. So we're not illegally spending money that I've seen someone put on Facebook to be able to put that pool in. So, and then, as you know, we were working with the contractor, and there in the 11th hour, the contractor wouldn't produce the insurance bond. And we would never recommend going with a contractor that won't produce the insurance bond, because that would put the city at jeopardy. So then staff had to retool and put it out for bid quickly, and that's where we're at to this process. So that's how we got to this point. We would have liked to have already been moving on it and moving down the road on it, but we have to work within the confines of the budget as well as what you all approved. But we didn't know until midsummer, I believe it was, that there was a bigger problem than we.
So there was, you said it was 707,000?
Mhm.
What did we budget for that?
What was it?
1.2.
So yeah, the base bid was just a little over $800,000. So the base bid came in under what we budgeted.
Good.
And are we the other question that was brought up, which I have to say I was really proud of the person that was with me at the time this question came up. And her basic response was, well, why is the pool not, why did we not open it? She said, well, because you didn't want your kids sucked out the bottom. I thought, well, there you go, and I didn't have to say that, so I thought it was a very pointed thing. So she had a lot of information that obviously a lot of people did not have. But the other question was, do we think we'll be on time frame for next year?
Yeah, so when we had the pre-bid meeting, a lot of the contractors' biggest concern was the time we initially had on the RFP. After meeting with those contractors, we adjusted that time frame to where they were all happy and didn't have any concerns with it.
That's all I got.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Turner?
Nothing.
Alderman Mills?
Couple maybe. The old Golden Corral, I call it, it's down, and they worked on cleaning it up today, and the car wash is still there, but it will be soon. I sent Brad the blueprints, MoDOT. They're really hard to find on the MoDOT site, but anyway, just for your information, MoDOT does have the blueprints done, and they are going to do a resurfacing from the Justice Center to up Mechanic Street to the four-way stop at Independence. There's no timeline. Brad's working to find out, if we're talking about in the next 5 years, because but the blueprints and all that stuff are on the site, and my understanding, one contractor was asked to bid on part of it, but I don't know the timeline on that. I see Andy signed off, but Andy told me that I'd be being contacted as one of a potential site for a charging station on I-49 to plug your electric car in and charge your car.
Oh, wow.
And then if you saw the Saturday, one of the news networks, some states are already trying to figure out how to tax the electric cars, because with no gas tax, we're not going to be able to pay for our roads. And we're talking about a gas tax potential here, but in reality, that's drying up over the next few years because of battery cars, and you're not going to buy gasoline maybe 10 years from now. And so my thing is, this is our electric grid. Wherever these charging stations, if they did go in Harrisonville, they're on our grid, they'd be on our meter. I don't know if you can tax it, but what electric rate are we going to charge the electric meter that is on this thing? And then back of my brain, because we had a problem with this years ago, there's an old ordinance that says you cannot resell our electricity. So this is a third party going to put these stations in. We're going to sell them the electricity. But when you put your credit card in there to charge your car, I assume they're in a profitable business. They're going to be reselling the electricity for a higher rate. Well, if that ordinance is still on the books, we can't do that. So that would need to be addressed, aside from what rate are we going to charge these cars. And the road is prepared for chip and seal from the end of Cantrell all the way to my property line, and then it starts again at the south property line and goes to Highway 2. They're not going to address Brush College like they have for the last 25 years. And he said, we're going to do the same thing on 275th Street because that's a city road now. Now, the county filled the potholes with the spray application thing. I don't know what that's called, where they spray the rock and the asphalt in the potholes with a truck, I don't know what that's called.
slurry.
They did 275th Street already in the spring, but somebody came and put black asphalt in the 2 potholes on, so maybe the city did that. And in the wintertime, both city and county trucks go by, and they both have their blades down, and they do plow the snow. So there's a mixture of things happening. But what I'm saying is if the county is deciding that when the city annexes a piece of property, and that's the line between the city and the county, that now it's a city road, do we need to talk about that with the county? And legally, if we're getting that road, what are we getting? Is it really a 60-foot right-of-way? Or, I mean, legally, I only own, according to my deed, to the middle of the road. So the city owns half the road. Now, that's ridiculous that you fix one half and they fix the other half. We've got to come up with some kind of a program here. But that takes me to another part of this same conversation. We just annexed in the truck stop and the motel down there. Well, when we annexed Walmart years ago, we went down Brookhart Drive and we took in the cell tower place, and I think it was the propane company was down there at the time. So we already are on one side of Brookhart Drive. We just don't do the top of the hill. But now we do the bottom part of Brookhart Drive, and now we do it all the way to the Walmart Distribution Center with the annexation of the truck stop in the other. Well, if what's happening on my property, if that's going to happen everywhere, we got to know how many streets we're taking over. And then that also led to, I mean, you know, he talked to me like I'm the czar of the city, you know. But anyway, but he goes, he said, and we got to make a deal on this brick plant road. You know, you wouldn't have any problems with that sewer line if you take over that brick plant road. And I said, well, how much money's coming with that? But I said, that's not my decision. That's for other people to discuss and talk about. So the idea's out there, but the first question is what are we inheriting, and is it legal? You know, and are we inheriting it, or what kind of agreements do we have with the county? None that I know of. So it's just an interesting thing.
I'll answer the first part, let Steve bring it home. My experience has been that any annexation, there's usually some type of, within the annexation document, or a agreement by ordinance that the city would take in that road. It usually has to be approved by the commissioners and has to be approved by the city. My experience with Cass County has been that if they have anything in writing that says that we would take the road, they honor that wonderfully, that we would take the road.
Sure they would.
But if there's nothing in writing and we were just annexing, so for example, let's use the Sapp Brothers that annexed in. There's a MoDOT road there.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you MoDOT will not say we own that road now.
No, when we annexed 71 Highway down to Walmart, the state did not give up 71 Highway.
Right, they're not going to give us that.
No.
So there should be something in writing on that section of your property that the city took that roadway in.
Yeah.
The other concern that we have found as we have worked with the sewer issue, and if I'm out of, you know, I don't have my shingle up for legal. You guys pay a lot more for your degree than I did mine. There has been some concern on the city that there is not anything on file showing the easements through there. That came, Carl had brought that to my attention of his concern. And so while we're in the process of discussions with the county on the agreement for using the right-of-way or that information, I do know from last week that one of the commissioners said that they believe that it will be favorably agreed to allow that. But once that's completed, we need the city attorney to review if it's a prescription easement, if there's nothing in writing, because the way the prescription easement works, and I might be using the wrong word for that, Steve, you can, we have some old parts of Harrisonville that we have a sewer line or a water line in the old parts of town or a power line in the old parts of town, and there's nothing in writing that the city has that easement through there. Well, I mean, there's a pipe or there is a electric line going through there, and the way that the statute is, once that's been there for, I believe, 10 years, and the city's been maintaining that, it becomes the city's easement because we're managing it and maintaining it. We have ran into that issue with some of our tree trimming issues, of people not feeling that the tree was, owned by the city, but it's right under the power line. And so the statute's pretty clear that if it's already there and the city's had it there for that period of time, then it's the city's easement through there. So there are some questions, and I do know that once we get past the agreement with the commissioners, we'll be having a discussion with Steve on the legalities as we go through there, because we don't want to start laying pipe and someone come along the way and say, well, you really don't have that in there. And when we do that in this agreement that we do have with the commissioners, we outline that we want to utilize those areas, but we also will probably have to have a discussion with them about, if we're going to take in that road, that we're going to put that in writing, that we're taking in that road to be able to put that sewer line through there.
Right.
So Carl and Steve can correct me on my legal and engineering degree interpretations, but that's on the layman's terms,
Right.
how I understand it. But I would have to see something in writing that says that the county gave and the city accepted that roadway, because that's usually what the county always looks for and the city always looks for.
Right.
Because there's a lot of times you go back and something happened in the 50s and the 60s,
Right.
but they usually even had something in writing
Right.
that said you took in those roadways.
Right.
So,
I
correct?
was just trying to avoid a war over the roads in the future. No matter whether the citizens or the county or Harrisonville, if nobody's going to fix their road because there's a war, we ought to get
Well,
something.
yeah, I mean, that's troubling to me to hear it, because
Yeah.
if they're going to do that, I mean, I'm sure that my staff would like to know that they need to include those lane miles in the maintenance of it.
Absolutely.
But the first question that we're going to say is, where's the agreement that says that we took it?
Right, right.
Mr. Maurer, did you have anything to add to that?
I think that layman's description was quite sufficient. The only issue that we're going to have is that if we do take the road from the county can only transfer to us what they actually have. And at best, what we've understood so far is that they have a prescriptive easement for a road. And typically, a prescriptive easement is limited to the use to which you are using it. So just because I've got a right to traverse your property on a road doesn't mean I have the right to also dig in and put a sewer line or a water line or some other type of use. So there's going to be some more discussions.
And I'm going to get grayer.
Thank you, Alderman Mills. All right, report from the city administrator.
Oh, I feel like I've been reporting already. Additionally, we talked about the outdoor pool. Just want to outline the report I set before you all is Glen Eagle subdivision retention basin, which will become part of a city. The Geotech has started their work. Olson has planned using a drone to do all the survey work out there. And staff has prepared the easements. So you all remember that we had easements for access to that property, and that has went to the current property, who has already voiced to staff that they're going to sign it, and they see it as an asset to their property for that easement through there. I'm going to kind of stay with stormwater, so that, as you all know, as we move forward with that, that'll really be a big and nice effect of dealing with a lot of the flooding on the south part of town. Wilson and Company and Stantec met with city staff, discussed the city lake and the amenities to that. That final plan review for that is mid-July with the advertisement in August. We're hoping to get going on Lake Luna, City Lake, and getting those accomplished before the next rainy season. Also, USGS has made 16 stream flow measurements at downstream I-49 and 7 measurements during the May 27th, 2021 event. We were fortunate during that last deluge of rain that we got. They were actually here, and they were working in the area, and so that was good for them to be here and to see that as they were setting those in where they needed to be. And then lastly, we just received the Culver's. What'd you tell me today, Chris, on the permit with Culver's?
Brought us a check for $32,000 for all of our connection fees and building permits. We're good to go.
Awesome.
So the permit's been approved, and so Culver's is racing forward on that. And lastly, remember the ribbon cutting this Thursday, 8:30, for the opening of Aldi's. If you haven't driven by, you can drive by there and see they've already got the carts out there stacked up, ready to go. So that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
You have the May 2021 municipal court report in your packet. Questions from the media?
With the cancellation of the trash contract, do you have any idea when we will have a replacement company? Will it be chambers and fees? What do we know?
So for the record, I'll just repeat the question from Mr. Minnick. He wanted to know that with the board's approval of the cancellation of the trash contract, where will we be going from here? So I'll let Mr. Ratliff speak to that.
As you all know, when you made the decision to cancel the contract, staff moved forward and sent out an RFP. Today at 5 o'clock was the deadline for RFPs. We had submittals to the RFP. Staff will be reviewing those submittals, making sure everything that was requested in the RFQ, or RFP, excuse me, was completed, and we will be bringing a recommendation of a new hauler to you all.
That question, what was that sent out, sir?
I didn't hear it.
His question was, when was the RFP sent out?
It was over 30 days ago. It's been publicized. It's on the website. It's sent out to Mid-American Regional Council. It was sent out all through the Metro contacts. So,
Mr. Minnick, did that answer your question?
well, yeah. I mean, we don't have someone selected yet, but we do have at least the submittals so that we can review the submittals.
Do you know how many you have?
I've been in meetings before I went in at all those meetings. I know there were 2 that had already came in.
Okay, before we adjourn, I want to ask you to please make a note in your calendars. Our next board meeting will be July 6th because of the holiday. We'll be meeting on a Tuesday. I wanted to issue a public thank you to Sheriff Jeff Weber. Chief Hofer and Mr. Arthur had the opportunity, you read this in your packet, we had an incident at City Lake last week that Chief Hofer and Mr. Arthur went to investigate, and Sheriff Weber was kind enough to allow us to use their patrol boat to go out onto the lake to take some drone photos. So you'll be hearing more about that in the coming days, but I did just want to publicly thank Sheriff Weber for that. I want also to thank the board for their tenacity in passing the Rental Ready program, and I want to thank staff for your work in putting it together. It's never been the desire of this board to have any kind of an adversarial relationship with landlords and property managers. We want to work together with them. It is our intent to come back at the next town hall meeting and explain further the Rental Ready program. You'll remember at the last town hall meeting, we didn't have the details. We went to the town hall meeting asking for input from the landlords. And at that point, we asked them to contact us, to meet with us, to give us input. And until this past week, we hadn't heard from any of them. But during the next town hall meeting, we want to explain in further detail what we know now about how the Rental Ready program will work. And we also want to begin to bring some details to the landlords and other property owners regarding this tax abatement program that is part of the Missouri statute, Chapter 353, which, pardon me, which does, as Mr. Ratliff has described, provide a tax abatement for property improvements. So we want to work with the landlords to help them improve their properties and help them improve the value of their properties. So I want to thank the board again and thank the staff for working together and putting that program together. Mr. Arthur, I know you worked very hard. Mr. Ratliff, Chief Hofer, others. I also just received a letter that I think is worthwhile to read. It's from the International Association of the Chiefs of Police. A couple of meetings ago, we presented a plaque to Corey Turner's parents to kind of establish the legacy of the loss of his young life back in 2016. You'll remember, too, that the International Association of Chiefs of Police magazine did a feature article of Harrisonville based on Corey's death and the Harrisonville Cares Coalition that was created as a result of that. So that kind of pushed Harrisonville to the forefront of what we were doing as far as the safety of our pedestrian and vehicular traffic. And the International Association of Chiefs of Police provided the opportunity for Harrisonville to be part of a videotaping, just again documenting what we do here as far as public safety. And so I want to share this letter. This letter came from the program manager of the International Association of the Chiefs of Police, and Chief Hofer has a copy and Mr. Ratliff has a copy. It says, Mayor Bowman, on behalf of the International Association of Chiefs of Police, the IACP, I want to thank you and the City of Harrisonville for the gracious support and assistance provided during the filming of our video project highlighting the traffic safety efforts of your city. I especially want to thank Chief John Hofer and his staff. Chief Hofer was a tremendous asset to our team, selflessly supporting the production by helping identify locations, connecting us with key personnel, and serving as the consummate host. Following the tragic death of high school freshman Corey Turner in 2016, the Harrisonville residents, municipal agencies, school district, and public safety organizations united to build a safer community, forming the Harrisonville Cares Coalition. The Harrisonville Police Department, under Chief Hofer's leadership, has played a vital role in ensuring the success of the program. We express our sincerest condolences for the city's loss of this young life and are honored to mention his story within our project. The IACP is proud to include Harrisonville in our video series recognizing exceptional traffic safety efforts as a model other agencies can use in their jurisdictions. It was a pleasure to work with Chief Hofer as well as all Harrisonville residents we encountered. Sincerely, Michael Fergus, Program Manager, International Association of the Chiefs of Police. Chief Hofer is standing in the doorway. Thank you again for your work on this. This is certainly worthwhile recognition for you and for the department and for the city. That's all I have. I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Work session.
Okay, good. Okay.
I have a motion from Alderman Dorhoff with a second from Alderman Franklin to adjourn from this meeting to our work session. So I would ask for all in favor to say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thank you. We'll take a 5-minute break and we'll come back here for the work session.